Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive's Employee of the Month, 2 months in a row. Leave a message at the... Hi, Jamie. It's me, Jamie. I just had a new idea for our song about the Name Your Price tool. So when it's like, tell us what you want to pay, hey, 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 and the trombone goes, blah, 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 and you say, we'll help you find coverage options to fit your budget. Then we just all do finger snaps while a choir goes, statements coming at ya, statements coming at ya. Yes? No? Maybe? Anyway, see your practice tonight. I got new lyrics for the rap break.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Aloha, everyone, and welcome to Aquarium Radio at aquariumradio.com. I'm your host, Yanakira Lessin, my co-host, Reverend John Polk and Karen Christine Patrick, and today we interview experiencer Lynn Hartrum on the Experiencers Network. So John is going to read part of the bio for Lynn, and we're going to spend this first part of the show going over Lynn's background and who she is and her experiences. And she recently did a hypnotherapy session, see what she got out of that. And then we're just going to go into a general conversation for the rest of the show, because all of us on this show today are experiencers. So take it away, John.
Lynn is a Reiki Master, Regressionist, Program Coordinator for FREE, which is an acronym for the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, and an ET experiencer. At the beginning of her career, she received her bachelor's in psychology and worked as a counselor with the intention of going on to get her PhD. After having children, however, she decided to be a stay-at-home mom, which also gave her time to train in Reiki and regression hypnosis, as well as earn some other certifications. As time went on, Lynn began to talk with more and more people about their ET experiences. Lynn realized there is a strong need for help and that her metaphysical training could be used to specialize in working with experiencers of abduction and ET contact. Lynn also is currently the program coordinator for FREE's peer support program. In addition to her training, Lynn is claircognizant and an empath, and has learned to work with her multidimensional self and concurrent lifetimes.
Hey, Lynn, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be back again.
What would you like to add about who you are? And it's been a while since we got this bio. Things you want to add?
Wow, that kind of is me in a nutshell. I mean, I do, most of the work that I do lately is with the peer support program for FREE, which is a great program that FREE offers for people who are having experiences or think they might be having an experience and not sure what to do, what to make of it, what to think, any of those things. And we pair them up with someone who is also an experiencer, but who is a little more well-versed in it, a little more acclimated to having it happen, have a, slightly better understanding of it, so that they kind of have, like a mentor friendship type relationship. It's not counseling or anything, but it's definitely someone to talk to who understands what they're going through and, an ear to listen, which is always a great thing. So that's really been a lot of what I've been doing lately. I do still do regression hypnosis as well, but most of my time is spent, we have a lot of experiencers writing in, looking for someone to talk to. So it's great that we were able to provide that service.
So how is FREE doing with the death of Edgar Mitchell? Has anything changed?
No, nothing has really changed that I know. Everybody was, of course, saddened to hear that has passed away. But, we still go on and still do what we're doing. There's still people that need help, so we still have to kind of carry on.
Excellent. Let's go round robin and asking questions of Lynn. So, Karen, what would you like to talk about with Lynn?
Well, I know both you and John work with Reiki. I was just wondering how that facilitates your communication with ET. Do you share that with people who are contactees, and how do you work with the Reiki knowledge base in what you do?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that question. Reiki actually kind of started me down this whole path. I had been practicing meditation for years, then I had kind of gotten out of it when I had my kids and decided to go back into it probably about 6 or 7 years ago now, and has really started up my practice of meditating and having, these kind of mystical meditations. And at one point, I received the message to learn about Reiki. And I've heard of it, but hadn't really, didn't know too much about it other than it was kind of like energy work, but that was about as much as I knew. And it was during my first Reiki class that we were practicing on each other, and it was after we had received the attunement, which is kind of like, I guess it's a passing of, the ability to channel the energy, the teacher kind of passes that along to you. And so I was practicing on a woman, and I saw in the corner this amazing, I don't know, at the time I thought maybe it was an angel, even though I wasn't very religious. It was the only thing I could describe it as. It was almost like a outline of a silhouette of a human-looking person. I didn't see any detail in the center, but there was this brilliant white and gold kind of glowing light coming out from, like, behind the silhouette. So that was kind of incredible, and yeah, I remember that kind of took me back, and that started me on this whole path of really learning more about.
Go ahead, continue. I'm sorry, I've got to shut off my phone.
That's okay. So I started learning more about interdimensional beings and ETs and all of that stuff, and it was during that time that I really started getting more information about my experiences. And so then I joined up with Free, and now I use Reiki mostly. I actually use it when I do regressions on people. I like to end the treatment, or like to end the session with a Reiki treatment as well. I find that it's very healing for people. It helps them kind of integrate the information that they've received more. So that's really the main way that I use it at this point.
Oh, fantastic. I thought it was interesting. You saw an angel, and we had that beautiful classical music come online. It was kind of an interesting time.
Yeah, that's true.
Anna, you got a classy ringtone there. That's I was, when you were mentioning that, I was sort of thinking of Dolores Cannon, because Dolores Cannon was doing regressions and hypnosis on people, and she experienced other beings speaking through the people, and had quite a bit of downloaded information that happened through the regression stuff that happened. It was coming from different people, which I always thought was very interesting. But yeah, that's good. Well, thanks for answering that question.
Sure, no problem.
John, your turn.
As I'm a Reiki master also, Lynn and I had talked about how when you go through these attunements, you actually start to vibrate at a higher frequency. And when you do that, it enables you to see into dimensions that are not necessarily visible to the naked human eye. And she was telling me, where when I was younger, seeing ghosts was kind of cool, but now that's the least of what happens to us. And our experiences actually mirror each other very much through becoming Reiki masters. When I got my first attunement, I was able to break through a little more. Second one, I broke through even more. And then upon becoming a master, that's when I started to see UFOs in the sky, ETs in my bedroom more than ever before. And I've seen all that before, but nothing like what had happened once I became a Reiki master. And Lynn, you said you had similar experiences through becoming the Reiki master, but I had a question for you. What Reiki modalities are you trained in, and what are their names?
I went Reiki crazy, and I have quite a few. But the main ones that I use are Usui Reiki, and then there's a type of Reiki called Egyptian Ahara Reiki, which I really enjoy using on people, as well as shamanic Reiki. And then there's just, there's so many different little kind of, I call them fun traditions. They're like the less serious ones. That I have a couple of those as well. But it's interesting because now that I've had more sort of ET interactions and more understanding, I really don't tend to use any one tool. I tend to do it more intuitively and not worry about, the specific hand placements or symbols or any of that. I just tend to use it, intuitively and help people. I
happen to get a sick cat. My friend brought a cat and it had been hit by a car. It was a little tiny kitten. And we didn't know what to do. And, we're both economically challenged, and we know taking a pet to the doctor would be several $100s. So we just started doing Reiki on it. And we didn't know what we were doing. We just were going into that intuitive level. We kept rotating until we got tired. We just kept sending energy to this cat. And at one point, I thought it was just going to take its last breath, and I said, if you want to go, that's fine, but if you stay, we're going to love you for the rest of your life. And she just turned around, and when we woke up this morning, she was still with us, and then she started to recover from these incredible injuries, and all we did was Reiki with her. It was amazing. Blew our mind.
It really is amazing. We're made up of energy. So it certainly only makes sense that energy could also heal us. And I think it's great that you get into it. We all have the ability to do it. The attunements definitely, I think, speed up the process, But because like John was saying, you do have this kind of increase in your vibrational frequency. I remember after I received the master attunement, I think I was like, I felt like I was cross-eyed and dizzy for about 2 days from it. But, I think it's fantastic that you were able to do it intuitively and thought to even try it, which is great.
Mm-hmm. I had some classes like a good 10, 15 years before, but I never did the certification. It was just a few classes. But even when I was in the classes, the Reiki Master just said, wow, you're doing it already. And it's I've been doing it intuitively all along. And I guess some people just, maybe I knew it in the previous life. That's all I know. I didn't really study it fully, but I was doing it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, some people are just really good at working with energy. I know my youngest daughter, she's the same way. I mean, she, can feel auras very well. I'll kind of like double check because she likes to try to do it, and I'll double check, and, she's always just, at the right spot. Like she feels it. She just works with energy really well. But I think some people just, maybe like you said, in a past life they did it, or they're just more in tune to working with energy. And it sounds like you must be one of those people.
Yes. Well, let me ask a question. Mm-hmm. So you and John met at the Experiencers Speak conference. What was that, in the summer?
Right.
2015 or something? I forget what month.
Yeah,
it was last this guy, John. You two have met. I've not met John, and I met Karen finally. So what was that like, meeting him? What were your thoughts and impressions, and et cetera?
It was great. John was awesome. It's funny because we had talked quite a bit before that. We met through Free, and he was helping me out with the peer support program at one point. So we had talked quite a bit before that. So, I mean, it was funny. It was like, yes, we were meeting in person for the first time, but I felt like I already knew John, and it was great.
Yeah, that's how it usually works. Okay, back to you, Karen.
Oh, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
I was wanting to know how your experiences started. We all have, how we got into that, and was it something that just kind of came to you, or you thought, did you get influenced by, some kind of somebody else's story, or how did that start for you?
Well, like John said, I've been having paranormal experiences my whole life. To seeing spirits and that type of thing was like, it was secondhand to me. But I guess the first interaction that I had would have been during that Reiki class. It was something that I saw visually, but there wasn't really much more interaction than that. And then I started looking into it a little bit more, and I think I had watched Ancient Aliens, actually. I'd seen like an episode or two of it. Not much, and that's really all I knew about any of this. I always knew that ETs existed. That was never a doubt in my mind, but never really thought to look much into it. And so I saw that show, and I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. And then it wasn't long after that I had a really vivid dream, and I remembered kind of like a moment in time in that dream, and I was laying on a table, and I saw these two little grays kind of peeking up over the edge, almost curiously looking at me, and then behind them was a really tall mantid in like a purple magenta kind of robe, and this image just really stuck in my mind, and so that was the very first vivid, like, oh, okay, something more is going on here moment for me that got me really looking into it more and more.
Did you have a hard time integrating it into your life experiences, or because you had a paranormal kind of background, was it easier, do you think, than maybe some people go through?
Yeah, I think so, because I know some people have a really, really difficult time. It's very traumatic. But for me, no, it didn't bother me at all. I thought it was pretty interesting, actually, and just wanted to learn as much as I possibly could about it and try to figure out what it was, what it meant, all of that, and learn more and more. Like, okay, well, have I been having these experiences and didn't even know it, all the time? So I thought it was, great. It wasn't, like I said, it was just kind of a moment in time, like a frozen moment in time, that picture in my head that I really remember, but very vividly. Very detailed. I even drew it out because I couldn't get the image out of my head. And as I was drawing it, one day I drew, I kind of sketched it out and drew the robe that the mantid was wearing. And as I'm looking at it, I kind of heard in my head, no, that's wrong, like this. And I saw a close-up of the detail of the neckline. And so I changed it and stuff. And it didn't even faze me, to be honest. It really didn't. I'm used to so many weird things, maybe. I don't know. That it just didn't faze me one bit.
Oh, that's funny. I went through the same thing drawing one of my beings, and he's telling me, no, you don't have the arms aren't long enough, or the boots are different, or because he had kind of a jumpsuit with boots. And finally, kind of got it right. And it's like they really want to be depicted correctly. I don't know if it's a vain thing or what, but they really want you to, because then it just makes it that much more real. And to me, it strengthened the telepathic contact considerably because it felt like there he is, that's that being, and it really made it very easy to be in contact with that being.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because, further down the road, I was talking with someone else, and she didn't have experiences with the mantis beings, but a friend of hers did. And I was describing that whole thing that I just told you to her, and she goes, oh, well, what color was the robe he was wearing? And I told her, I was like, it was kind of a purpley, magenta, burgundy sort of color, but there was this gold detailing on the neckline. And she's like, oh, my gosh, can you send me the picture that you drew? Which I did, and she said, that robe is exactly like what my other friend who saw a mantis being as well, exactly what he described. So it was really interesting that the robe itself was what, caught her attention, and she made that connection.
I have to ask, too, a lot of people, there's kind of a thing where people try to cast one particular race as being totally evil or totally good or totally benevolent or totally not. On the mantis being that you experienced, did you have what was your feeling about kind of who that being was?
Oh, I felt this overwhelming affection towards him. He just seemed very, very kind, very wise. It seemed like I knew him somehow, but I wasn't quite sure how. And still to this day, I'm not quite sure how. But no, I felt like this very strong affection for him, like you would feel towards, say, like a grandfather or someone, of that nature. So, no, I'm very much against the whole, all of one race is evil. Anybody who knows me knows I speak out against that all the time about the reptilians. I say, look, everyone, not every being in this race is going to be evil. So we cannot sit there and say that the reptilians are bad. And, same goes for the mantids. And in fact, everyone that I've spoken with who has had mantid encounters has not had negative encounters. They've all been very positive and have, very similar feelings towards them as I did.
Yeah, that would be trying to say the same thing about human beings. Are all humans good or all humans bad? If we were putting the shoe on the other foot, it's like, no, it's a mixed thing. It just depends on the individual.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Sure.
Well, I've interacted with the mantis beings, and I found that they were very friendly and kind and loving, so I agreed. John, your turn.
It's funny you say that, because the very first time I was ever on Aquarian Radio, I was really being interviewed instead of being a co-host. And then that night, I'm laying in bed, and sometime during the middle of the night, I saw a praying mantis in my bedroom on the wall. And it had the classic face of a praying mantis, but it had the body of a grasshopper. And it was kind of all crunched, like how a grasshopper, before it jumps, will be in kind of a crouched position. That was what I saw. And I had never seen one before. I've seen all kinds of ETs before, but I'd never seen a praying mantis before. And most recently, they've been coming to me quite a bit. I feel for benevolent reasons. I believe as part of my maturation process, where Enoch became Yahweh and then Yahweh became Enlil, that I was fed these little breadcrumbs incrementally because I was still maturing spiritually. And so now I'm in constant communication with a praying mantis being that seems to be here representing my better interest, which is good, because they're almost always portrayed as being just nothing short of total evil. So I agree with what you lady said about, just like humans, there's good and bad humans, there's good and bad ETs too. And I always pray and meditate on only communicating with the ones that are of the light. And it seems to work for the most part. But getting back to Experiencer Speak 4, August 28th and August 29th of last year, I was sitting with Lynn, and she and I had both been visited by childlike ETs. Can you remember that, Lynn?
Yeah, the little grays. We both had a very childlike quality.
They did, and it was almost like they came to us for like a parenting, nurturing kind of quality that we had that they needed from a human for whatever reason. I don't know. Did you feel that way too, Lynn?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, it was they were very curious. And it was very much like a child, looking. I didn't find them at all. I know some people talk about them as being very robotic, no emotions whatsoever, and I, definitely did not get that feeling from them. It was much more curious, much more exactly like you described it. I can't even put it better than that, like looking towards me like a parental type figure for them.
And I remember we were talking about that, and I think you said that I was either one of the only people that have told you that about an infant like ET, or that I was the only person that had ever talked to you about that.
Yeah.
Which one was it?
At that point, yes, you were the only other person that I talked to that had described the grays that you saw as childlike. Since then, I have talked to one other person, but it's actually quite rare that I talk to anybody who says that. So it definitely caught my attention when you said it, too.
Well, and then it's obvious that we are receiving contact from similar, if not the same ETs. I mean, one would logically conclude, especially since we were talking about it, and you're like, I think you're the only person I've ever talked to who's actually had an ET encounter with a childlike ET that was wanting some kind of parental nurturing from us for whatever reason. I can't be exactly sure, but I don't know, it made me feel good. Like I would have visions of this, and it looked like your typical gray, but it would come up to me and it would want me to hold him like a baby.
I was just going to say, hold it like a baby? Is that what you said?
Yeah, or just hold him. I mean, I could see him like crawling up on me and wanting me to put my arms around him and hold him. And, so I did. It was a total trip. It seemed like, you and I were having a similar kind of experience, perhaps with the same ETs.
Do you think they're your children?
No, I would actually say that personally. I did not get a hybrid vibe from them at all. It was
me either.
Short little grays.
Okay.
But we've talked about concurrent lifetimes. How I'm living here in the physical 3D Earth plane, but I also coexist in another dimension, in another body, and I think that's maybe where they knew us or we knew them from. I'm just making an educated guess on that.
Yeah, that's very possible. I never thought of it that way. Like another lifetime as a gray.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then another encounter that Lynn and I both had was in March of last year. I was training myself to look into infrared and ultraviolet light spectrum so that I could see a UFO craft within its own cloaking device without having to use any specialized equipment, binoculars, or the special glasses, or even a camera. And I saw this red UFO. It was basically just a nondescript red dot, and I followed it for probably 8 hours, and it stayed in the same spot in the sky all night long. And I called Lynn and I told her about it, and about 2 or 3 days later, she was followed by, if it wasn't the same UFO, then it was something almost identical to it. And Lynn, you want to finish that story?
Yeah, sure. So John had told me about his encounter, and I thought that was really interesting. And then I think it was like 2 days later, my oldest daughter had an orchestra concert, and it was running really late, and so I decided to take the youngest home. And as I was driving her home, or actually as we were walking out of the school is where it first started, I saw what looked like a really big, I guess kind of like a star or a planet, but it was just a bright white, but it was really big, bigger than anything else in the sky, and quite a bit lower than everything else too. And I just kind of thought like, okay, well that's interesting, but let's get you home and put you to bed. And I was driving home, and I think I was telling John it was about a 20-minute drive. I had to go through like 3 different towns, making left turns, right turns, and the whole way, this thing, whatever it was, I didn't realize at that point what it was. I could see outside my front passenger window, and just right there, didn't have any trouble seeing it, regardless of which direction I turned, where I was going. So at some point, I pulled off the road and took a couple of really quick pictures of it in an infrared spectrum, and then, got in the car, didn't really look at it because I wanted to get my youngest daughter home and put her to bed. And the next morning, I was looking at the pictures, and I, zoomed in, and it was red, and it had almost like these blue kind of triangular, I don't know if spikes are the right word, but points coming out from around it. It looked really cool, and that's when I had called John, I think that morning, maybe John, and I was just like, oh my gosh, you're never going to believe what I, got a picture of. And so I sent John a copy of the picture, and he was like, oh my God, you're never going to believe this. That looks exactly like what I just saw 2 nights ago. So it was pretty interesting that we both seemed to see the same thing, or like John said, the exact, another version of the exact same thing.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, it was, totally.
Yeah, it was a really cool picture.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about your regression session you had with Dr. Lessin?
Oh, sure. I definitely would love to hear what you guys think about this, because there was so much to it that I was not expecting at all. And Dr. Lessin was amazing. I highly recommend him, if anyone's looking to do a regression. But I guess to start off with, maybe I should talk about a little bit about what had been going on before that, very briefly. So I am one of those people who has experiences, who wakes up, very common, with bruises. A lot of the times it'll look like a fingerprint or, just like a small finger, like tip, I guess, or the fingers themselves, like long, thin bruises, and I'll wake up with those not knowing where they came from, and I've had that my whole life, so I've never really thought much of it. But about 2 months before I had the regression, I started waking up with these huge, dark bruises on my legs mostly. And these are things like, there is no way that I could have accidentally done this to myself and not realized it, because they were big, and most of them were really dark purple. And it was constant. It was like just as one was healing, I would wake up and have another one. It was horrible looking. And so I was kind of like, okay, well, they didn't hurt. There's nothing I could really do much about it. And I just thought, well, this is really weird. Why is this happening all of a sudden? And then I guess maybe about 2 or 3 weeks before the regression, I was looking through some videos and just happened to randomly come across a video about the secret space program, and knew of it, but had never really looked into it thoroughly. And so for some reason I felt the urge to watch the video, and I did, and I thought, oh, wow, that's really interesting. And so I watched a couple more things, but not a ton of stuff about it. And once I started doing that, and I think once I spoke with you and we had booked the session, no more bruises, nothing. It was funny. It was just like, I can't tell you, like every week I would get like at least 2 or 3 bruises. And after that, no bruises at all. And still have, to this day, haven't gotten any. And it's been, I think maybe 3 weeks, since the regression. So I thought, well, that's interesting. The timing of that is certainly interesting, but maybe there isn't. And, just kind of went in with an open mind. And it was definitely really interesting, that's for sure. So we started out at a point where I was 7 years old, and I was in my house. We lived in Florida at the time, and I remember one of my younger brothers was watching TV, and my stepmom was making something in the kitchen. And these really, really tall men dressed all in black, and I knew it looked like kind of like a military uniform, because my dad was in the military, and at that point in time he was in the military. And they reminded me of his fatigues, his camouflage fatigues, but except that they were all black. It wasn't camo. And they had these helmets on that reminded me of like a really dark, blacked-out motorcycle helmet. So I couldn't see their faces, had gloves on, couldn't see any of that. The only thing I could see was what looked like 3 or 4 kind of blue and purple feather-like things sticking out from them. So they came inside, and they were really tall. They had to bend down to go through the doorway. And they brought me outside, and I wasn't scared of them, even though I didn't know who they were. But they brought me outside and kind of stood around me, and we were surrounded by this, what I called in the regression, as a 7-year-old me, I said, oh, we're surrounded by a big bubble, because it looked like a bubble. It was, clear. I could see through it, and it shot up, and we started taking off, and we're up into the sky, and, I'm like, oh, my gosh, this is awesome. I love it. And I just thought it was the greatest ride ever. And so we went up, like, through the atmosphere, and then we were out into space, and so then I was just like, whoa! And I remember going crazy thinking, like, this is the coolest thing that has ever happened. And we came upon this really big ship, and I think I described it like a building laying on its side, like a really tall, not quite skyscraper, but a very large building laying on its side. And we pulled up to this little dock thing, and I could kind of see this man off in the distance walking towards us. And we were coming out, and he was, getting a little closer, but still kind of far away. And I recognized that it was my dad. And immediately I got upset and kept saying, he lied. I can't believe he lied. Why did he lie to me? And in the regression, I could feel the tears coming down on my cheeks. And I was getting, really emotional about it. And Dr. Lessin had asked me at that point, what do you mean? What do you mean that he lied? Why do you keep saying he lied? And I explained to him how, my dad was always very big on, we do not lie. That is like one of the worst things we could do. He went to VMI, Virginia Military Institute, and he would tell us stories about, when people would get caught in a lie, that they would be expelled. And, whenever we got in trouble, regardless of what we did, if we lied about it, we were in 10 times as much trouble. So he always stressed, that lying was a really, really bad thing to do. And so at that point, in a 7-year-old mind, I was having trouble understanding how he could be saying that to us, and yet here he was on some ship out in space while we're thinking he's working on the Air Force base. And so in my head, I was just like, I got really upset, and I was trying not to cry and trying to kind of contain myself, and the guys in black that were with me noticed this, and so they kind of circled around me so I could kind of contain myself and center myself a little bit before my dad came to us. And so he walked over and just kind of smiled, and then we followed him, and he took me to this room. And at that point, he left, and all but 2 of the men in black left. I shouldn't say men in black. That makes it sound like they're something else. The men that were dressed all in black with the helmets, they stayed with me, and it was a room full of children, and they were sitting in pairs at these tables. And I thought, this is really interesting. What if a boy came up to me right as I was thinking, like, okay, what am I supposed to do here? And he took my hand, and he was like, come on, I'll show you what to do. And so I said, okay, and I went with him. And we sat down at the table, and there in the center of the table, floating was this big ball of energy. And he referred to it as a globe. And he's like, okay, what you want to do is put your hands on either side of it. And it was it looked like a light blue kind of energy, just this big ball of energy. And he said, put your hands on either side of it. And he showed me how to do it with his hands. And as he did, the energy started to turn pink inside. And so I said, okay, that's really cool. And so I put my hands on either side of it. And he said, no, what you want to try to do is make the energy move faster simply by, telling it with your mind, by thinking it. And so I said, okay, I'll give it a go. And, tried. And it started moving a little bit, but it was fairly slow. And he was like, just think the word faster, 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 faster. So I said, okay. And as I did that, it started to get like bright pink and swirling all around. And I was like, whoa, that's awesome. And as that happened, like, the lights kind of went out in the room, and I felt like everybody was watching me. And I was like, okay, well, for a 7-year-old, that's a little intimidating, but this is really cool, so I'm going to keep doing it anyway. And then he said, now what you want to try to do next is keep your palms out, but slowly pull them away and try to take some of the energy with you as you do it. And so I did, kind of thought that in my head, like focused on it, and as I pulled my hands out to the side, the energy did start to come with my hands, and the best way I can describe it was that it looked like a ton of bubble gum sticking to my hands. The energy came out. And then the lights came back on. I thought, oh, that was really neat. And the guys that were dressed in black came over to me, and so I knew we were done there. And they, told me they were going to take me to my dad. And so we were walking along, and the ship, so this is where I got to really see some more of the interior of the ship at this point, long and tall. It was about 6 stories high, really long. I'm not quite sure how long. And in the center, it was all open. So it's like a long center section that was open all the way up to the ceiling. And you could see each of the floors on either side of the center opening. And they kind of had railings, on each of the floors, and these, like, metal walkways. And I remember hearing the kind of clinking of the metal as we walked along it, and it was like a metal sort of grating. I think I described it kind of like it reminded me of a submarine that we had gone on a tour on when I was a kid. Excuse me. And we walked past this, and the rooms that were on the side, they were on my right side as we were walking. It just looked like a normal, hallway with rooms, like, except that it was open on the other side. But, it was just normal walls, normal doors. We walked past one room that had, like, a giant window you could see into it. It looked like a blood lab. There was a guy getting his blood taken, and I remember thinking, like, oh, God, I hope we're not going in there. I don't want to do that. And they took me down. Then we turned down a hallway and went a couple of different turns. We got to my dad's office. And they opened the door, and he came over to me. And he kind of smiled and said, "Oh, you did a really great job. Did you have fun?" And I said, "Yeah, it was really cool, but what is this place?" And he was like, "Well, you'll know more when you're older." And that was kind of the end of it, and I didn't ask any more questions. And so he said, "Oh, I want to show you something." And he pushed this button that I think was on his desk, and the side wall of his office all of a sudden went clear. And I could see that we were hovering right next to the moon. So I could see this giant surface of the moon. And my 7-year-old me was again kind of spazzy, like, "Whoa, that's amazing!" Thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. Now. So I stood there looking at it for a little bit, and he was like, "Oh, how did you like what you call the bubble ride?" And I said, "Oh, that was really neat. I like that." He was like, "Yeah, I thought you would like that. I chose that for you because I figured you would like it." And I said, yeah, I did. It was really neat. Same men are going to take you home, but you're going to go home a different way. We don't usually do the bubble. We usually travel a different way, so they're going to take you home a different way. So just, don't be expecting that. So I said, okay. And so they took me to a room, and in this room there was like a circle on the floor, and they had me stand in the center of the circle, and like 3 of them, I think, stood around me. And there was a bright flash of light, and all of a sudden I was back in my living room. The men weren't there. And my brother was still watching TV. My stepmom was still, working in the kitchen, cooking, just like when I left. And so I went over to her, and I was like, "Did you see that? Did you see the men? Did you see the men in black? And did you see the bright flash of light? Did you see any of that?" And, she was kind of like, "Lynn, there wasn't anything. You have an overactive imagination. Stop lying. Nothing happened." And so I was like, okay, and kind of just dropped it. And then at another point, we went to time, and I was an adult at this point. I'm not exactly sure how old I was. I want to say I was in my early 20s, maybe mid-20s, and we were on a ship again, and I was in some kind of a lab, and I had like a white lab coat on, and there were all these different like ET-looking animals. And I realized that this was where I worked, and I was like a biologist or something of some kind because I studied these animals, and I knew that was my job, and that I was able to kind of empathically connect to them. And, I studied them, watched their behavior, learned more about them. And as I learned about it, I would teach other people about them, specifically the children that came on the ship. We would have them come in, and I remember teaching them about these animals and trying to explain to them, like even if something looks scary, that doesn't mean that necessarily is. And there was one little creature that I used quite often to do this, to demonstrate this, because he was kind of like a rabbit, but he had a really different face. The face wasn't like a cute little bunny face. It was almost like a bat face. It's the best way I can describe it, but it had really big fangs. But he was, just super, super gentle, the sweetest little guy you can imagine. And so I would use him often with the kids because he was a great example. Like, he may look scary, but he's really not. And I was trying to get them not to judge things by the way that they look. And then I remember while I was in there, one of the guys that I had seen when I was 7, the guys dressed all in black, come in the room. And they said that they urgently needed my help and to come with them. And so I said, okay. And so they brought me into a room where there was a woman. She was lying on an exam table. She was thrashing all about, absolutely going crazy. And so I told them to give her a sedative. And once she was sedated, I scanned her body with machine. And I saw that she had a parasite inside of her. And so I removed the parasite with this, it was like a laser type tool. And I knew I had to be careful because I could see myself doing this, it was right near her uterus and it was a little bit entangled in her intestines, so I kind of had to be really careful. And I put it in a glass jar and told them, do not kill this. I want to study it. And I finished it up, closed her up, and that was that. And so then I also said to Dr. Lessin that I was someone who not only did I connect with the animals, but if a new ETs came on board, they would have me go with them and kind of interface with them and learn a little bit about them. And I remember saying to Dr. Lessin, if they're higher vibrational beings, I try to get them to stay for a little while with us. And he said, well, why is that? I said, well, they're higher vibrational beings. It's good for everyone to be around it. And he kind of said, well, what about the lower vibrational beings? And I said, oh, well, they're the ones that work on the ship. And it was because I was working on a military ship. And so the ETs that were working with them tended to be of a lower vibrational frequency. And so by working with these other ETs, I tried to get them to kind of connect with the military men a little bit in hopes that, they would help kind of get rid of maybe some of that military mindset. And one of the things that I had said was I try to teach them, not to shoot first, ask questions later. Ask questions first before you do anything. And then another place that we went to on the ship, I said this was one of my favorite places, was like a garden area. It was really lush, had different trees, plants, just all kinds of different flora and fauna that were foreign, ET, not from Earth. Beautiful, though. And there was a pond right in the middle of it that, at nighttime, they tried to keep the ship on a circadian rhythm so they would dim the lights at nighttime. And this pond would glow. It was like bioluminescent is what it reminded me of. It would glow. And you could lay down and up on the ceiling, way far up, it was glass, so you could see out into space. And so I remember I would lay down, and this was kind of my little sanctuary away from all the military stuff. And then at one point I wanted to see if this was, in fact, the same ship that I'd been on before and if my dad was there. And so I had found one of the guys that were all in black and asked them, do you know my dad? And do you know his name? Or no, I think I just said, do you know, Colonel Wallington? And so they said, oh, yes, and they brought me to his office. And so I knocked on the door, and he was in there, and he said, come on in, and he was like, oh, hi. And so I sat down across from him, and I remember looking at him, and it was the strangest thing because I recognized he was my dad. Obviously, I knew he was. But I remember saying to Dr. Lessin, it's my dad, and I know it is, but I have absolutely nothing to say to him. It's like I'm sitting across from a stranger. And so I said the same thing to my dad, and he said, oh, yes, I did that. I put a block in your mind so that nobody would know you were my daughter. I thought it would be mutually beneficial for both of us. And what I kind of got from that was that he was, very much a military man, and I was very much a pacifist and not necessarily for all of that and never have been. And so since those two things were so very conflicting, he thought it would be better if nobody knew that I was his daughter. And so that's why I had nothing to say to him. And so I guess those are the main points of the regression. So what do you guys think?
Wow, what a trip.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, that's very, very crazy, very interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think, Karen?
Well, I was just when I was young, and I was like junior high age, I was about 6 or 7 years old when the Apollo program happened. So they kind of interwove like interest in space in the science classes when I was growing up. And we had been shown a movie, like a video, or, well, it wasn't a video back then, it was a movie. And they were showing a space station, like what would a space station look like. And I was just listening to what she had to say about, like, there'd be like an open area, and then how she was talking about the change from night to day so you could keep your day-night schedule, figured out and all of that kind of stuff. Just the detail of that was really amazing. Because they were, NASA was talking about that kind of thing. They were doing artist renditions of space stations with some similar details to what she was talking about. And then, from my perspective, we just sort of stopped. Like, it was reasonable to assume when you were a kid my age that it was very, very possible that we would have space stations and we'd have a job in space if we wanted to. Why wouldn't we think we couldn't? And working with the lunar anomaly stuff and Ken Johnston and just finding out what he said about how at the rate of pace of development that we were going, we should have been going to Mars by the mid-'70s. So I've been pretty convinced that we do have a secret space program, just based on the development. We were, charging along there for 20 years under when Kennedy was saying, "Hey, let's go to space," and then we just didn't anymore, And the space shuttles never went to another planet or to the moon or anything. They just went up to the space station and back. We literally built like a place for it to go and for it to come back and forth and back and forth. And it's been really frustrating to me personally that's it. That's as far as we ever got with our interest in space. The one thing that makes me believe that we have a secret space program, and Lynn, it sounds like you were interacting with it. Was your father around? I mean, did you talk to him about this scenario, or did that walk sort of carry on into real life?
In the regression, you mean, or in real life?
No, I mean, did you didn't remember any of this until the regression, so you didn't really have a chance to talk to your father about it, I'm assuming.
Right.
Okay.
No. Yeah, no, I haven't had a chance. And he and I don't really have much of a relationship at this point, so it's not like I can, ask him. And honestly, and Dr. Lessin and I were talking about this afterwards, even if I did ask him about it, knowing my dad, he would completely deny it. Even though he's not in the military anymore, he's retired, he's very much, he would not break those rules, definitely not. So he would have denied it anyway.
Yeah, and the fact that he was out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I don't know if people remember, but that's where the Roswell material went. Back when it was picked up from New Mexico, where I'm at, it was sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and there was a woman that was working there. Her name was June Crane, and she actually got to handle some of the material from the crash. And she worked there at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and she wasn't going to tell either, except that she was waiting for the government to, disclose. And she got cancer, and she says, "I better tell my part of the story because I don't know if I've got very much longer to live, and I expected my government to be truthful to the American people." So Wright-Patterson is one of those places that's legendary in the UFO world that apparently they have the material, and it's very plausible that they reverse engineered the material, and then the Star Trek universe that we thought we were going to get, we have it. It's just not revealed to the regular people, except that there's likely to be a time when it's going to have to be. And some of the whistleblowers I've talked to said we're in soft disclosure, means we're getting used to being brought up to dates as to the fact that there is a secret space program, which totally makes sense to me. But that's a very interesting story, very detailed, amazing detail for, you didn't make this up. You were a witness to very in-depth details, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible, everything that I saw, and in the moment being there, the different realizations that I had, or just kind of a knowing, like, okay, I work here, this is what I do, these are the things that I like to do while I'm here. It was definitely really, really fascinating, and it blew my mind, too, that, all of this stuff kind of came back to me, I guess.
Well, they talked about, some of the whistleblowers that had come out said that they had went and were brought up to Mars, or they were brought in the secret space program, and then they were regressed and put back in their own timeline to live out a, I guess, normal human life, which would be an awesome way to keep all this stuff secret. And my first tour of coming to New Mexico, I met different kind of, people that were, UFO contactees and whatnot. And they look at me and they said, "I know you. I remember you. You were in a lab coat." So when you said the lab coat thing, I was kind of amazed. So I felt, and I feel like I wanted to be in the sciences, but I had different weird things that happened to me that kept me from finishing my science degree. But I had a lifelong interest in science, so if I had an alternative life as a scientist, it would make a lot of sense. And it sounds like you like animals.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's so funny. Yeah, I do have a million animals. It's so funny that you say that, because I afterwards, I kind of had that same thought in my head, like after the regression, like, wait a second, if I was in like my 20s, maybe early 30s, I already had kids at that point. Because I had my first child when I was, I think, 26 or 27. Like, how did that work? And then I had heard about that too, and that was the only thing that really made sense was the age regression. I was like, oh, okay, well maybe I must have been, part of that, because otherwise I couldn't reconcile it. But I did see someone, I don't know if it was either maybe Randy Kramer or Corey Good, afterwards I saw something with them, and they had said, that when you come back, they will kind of program into your mind not to go in a certain way. So, say if you were one of the super soldiers, they would, try to make sure that you didn't go into the military so it wouldn't trigger the memories back. And not a lot of people know this, but my freshman year in college,
Hello?
Hello? Uh-oh.
We lose Lynn?
Did we lose
her?
Where's Lynn? Okay, let me try to get her out. There she went. Okay, I will call her again. Go ahead, keep talking. I will give her a call.
Yeah, I really want to hear
You've
that.
You've reached the voicemail box of 97847188150. At the tone, please record your voice message. When you are...
She is. Okay. Hi, Lynn. Wait.
Hi, sorry.
Hi, Lynn.
I got
That's okay.
cut off. So funny. The same thing happened when we were trying to do the regression. I don't even know if you remember, Janet, how I was trying to tell Dr. Lessin some of these things, and we kept getting cut off, and ended up having to do it over the phone. But anyways, what I was trying to say was, so I was a zoology major my freshman year, wanted to be a vet. Within a week of going to school, I somehow came down with mono, which
you're kidding me.
No, I didn't kiss anyone. I didn't drink anything after anyone else, so it was kind of weird. And I was out of class for about 6 weeks. And
I had mono, too. I had the same thing happen to me.
That's so crazy. That's crazy.
I got a horrible case of it, yeah.
Yeah. And
oh, my gosh, that's weird.
That is really weird. Yeah, and it just derailed it. I met midway through my freshman year. My grades were terrible because I wasn't in class, and we met with different vet schools. They had some, representatives come, and they were looking at our, transcripts and our grades and all that, and they basically told me, after your freshman year, you've screwed it up. It's too competitive. There's no way you're going to get into vet school. You need to find a different major. And I was heartbroken. Oh, I was heartbroken because that was all, that was what I wanted to be for the longest time. And, so ended up going into psychology, and that served me well, also. But, yeah, so that was really interesting that when they said that about, how they will try to get you from not doing a certain thing to keep the memories hidden, it reminded me of that when that happened. And I thought, oh, interesting. Well, maybe that explains why I got mono, and we never knew why I got it. And, yeah, it's pretty weird.
Yeah, I had it too, and it completely derailed me from graduating in computer science because I got thrown off again, like the schedule, like you did, and I had a pretty severe case. I had a kind of a moment of rethinking my life path, and I decided I was married at the time. I decided to have my first child after that. So that's but what's strange is all through my life I kept feeling like information would pop in my mind, and I'm like, where did that come from? And it's like it feels like I've had an advanced science degree or something, because I would know something without studying it, and then when I went and looked it up, it was validated to me that I knew. So it was kind of like I call it. We have here's how I rectified it in my mind: is that we have these different timelines that you can be in, and if you were scientist over in another timeline, that if it's close enough adjacent timeline and you're bright enough and you're intuitive enough, you can just kind of draw information from that other lifetime. That's what I figured. It's just dipping into your own morphogenetic field, basically, your own, who you are. And so that's what I figured. But I have a very strong feeling. And I had 5 other people tell me that they saw me before in a lab coat, that they know me. So I must have worked with these other people also some way or another. But, yeah, oh, my gosh, that's weird. That's not a fun disease. I didn't kiss anybody either.
No.
They call it kissing the disease. I shared French fries with a friend, and he got 3 people. He was like a carrier. He got 3 people sick. Crazy.
Oh, no, that's terrible. Yeah, it was really bizarre. I had no idea how I had gotten it. I mean, I'd only been at school for like a week, and I didn't know anybody really, so it's not like I had shared anything with anyone.
Oh,
so,
man.
Yeah, it was crazy, yeah.
Hi, I'm just muting. I'm muting in between so I don't make noise accidentally. I need to take a 5-minute break if you want to just keep talking, or we could just play some music here. What would you prefer?
Either is fine with me.
Okay. How about you, ladies and gents, just keep talking, and I'll be right back in a few minutes. I'm going to go find some socks and a sweater. It got cold. It's sundown in Maui, and it just drops like 20 degrees like that. Well, probably 10, but it feels like 20. I'll be right back. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, John, you got any thoughts?
I do. I'm going back to August 29th at the Experiencer Speak 4 conference where Travis Walton, we were about to watch his DVD, and they had dimmed the lights, and these four visitors showed up, and they came up to me, and Lynn was sitting right next to me, and they were asking me if I'm the one that they paid to see Travis, and I said no, and then I found Audrey Hewen's twin sister, Debbie, and then Debbie found Audrey, and, you know, the whole story about the blue people. But you know what? The saga continues. So, you know, X amount of months removed, I'm at a MUFON meeting on the 27th of last month. And I try to go to these meetings even though I'm not a big fan of MUFON in any way whatsoever. But I try to go to these meetings just for the sake of going to these meetings and meeting people and, you know, for that whole purpose. I want to meet people that are in a similar field as I am. And I got to meet, and I'd met her before, but I never really had an opportunity to talk to her, which was Audrey Hewen's mom, Nancy. And she's such a beautiful light worker, you know. And we talked for maybe 15, 20 minutes. And you'll find this interesting, Lynn, is I was saying, what did you know about the blue people? Did you see the blue people? Did you talk to the blue people? And she told me a story that I didn't know about involving Eric Mitchell's son. Remember his son that was with him at the conference, Lynn?
Yeah.
Anyway, Nancy told me that he was, I don't know his name, but Eric's son, he was swimming in the pool. And that the blue people came up to him while he was in the pool and told him, hey, you need to get out of the pool because your dad's going to be speaking soon.
Hmm.
I know. I did not know that part of the story.
And that was way before they got there, wasn't it?
Yeah, which implies to me that they were there the whole time. You know, they didn't just show up right when Travis, his DVD started to be played.
Right.
Interestingly, the conference was about a half an hour behind schedule, which is very common for these conferences because you have such brilliant orators up there talking. It's hard to, tell them to stop, especially when they're all lathered up and they're just flowing, But the blue people showed up exactly on time to watch the DVD and then there for the question and answer period. So anyway, I was talking to Nancy at length before the MUFON meeting started, which was really cool because I didn't really get an opportunity to talk to her too much at the conference. Everybody was wanting to talk to her, and but we immediately recognized each other, and I didn't know where I'd seen her before. I didn't know, but she knew who I was. She remembered me, I guess, because I spoke. But anyway, after that, after talking with her and Denise Stoner did something which was really interesting. She pulled some Gestalt theory on us. Mm-hmm. And she was showing these frames on her PowerPoint presentation, and one of them was a UFO. And she stops on the UFO, doesn't say anything, and then maybe 3 to 5 seconds later, she flips to another frame and then stops us and tells us, okay, here's part of the experiment. I just showed you a UFO. I want you to draw it and or describe it the best way that you can. And we're all going, oh, man, and none of us got it exactly correct. And she said, there's 50 of us here. She said, I expect 40 to 50 different explanations and drawings of what it actually looked like. And she was completely correct. Only one person got very, very close to what it looked like. But anyway, prior to that, I was telling Karen about this a few weeks ago, how I had a dream that Travis Walton came to me in my dream and said something very, very strange and off the wall to me. He said, if you can electrically phase your mitochondrial DNA, then you can, in effect, change your DNA and shapeshift. And that was the dream. I mean, that's a dream. Something like that comes to you in a dream. I mean, how profound is that? And the more I started to dig into my own body, mind, spirit, and subconscious, I concluded that wasn't Travis Walton that came to me in my dream. It was one of the blue people. It was the head blue person who we call Don. He goes by the name of Don because he said nobody would be able to pronounce his real name. And I found that incredibly interesting. And then the night after the MUFON meeting, I know I was abducted. I just absolutely know I was. And I wake up on my couch at like 3 a.m, and my front door is wide open. And where I live, you don't want to leave your front door open where I live. I got a decent house, but I live in the middle of the city, and it's not the best place to leave your door open. That tripped me out. And then when I woke up and cleared the cobwebs off, I had a dream about the blue people, except they were all female. They were all female. And so I started to mull over this and try and extract some logic from it. And what I concluded is that, often abductees, it happens through generations of families. The parents will pass it down to the kids, who will pass it down to one of the brothers, sisters, uncles, cousins, something like that. And that's happened in my family. And it became abundantly clear to me that, Nancy Hewins is really the gatekeeper for those Pleiadians that visited us at the conference.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Doesn't it? It does. It does. And I didn't have a chance to tell her that because I didn't figure it all out until, after the conference. After the MUFON meeting, and I had time to go home and meditate and start digging into my subconscious and try and extract some information that made some sense. And that was the best sense that I could come up with out of it. What do you think, ladies?
Yeah, I mean, knowing Nancy, I could definitely see that. It makes total sense. Like when you said that definitely resonated. Like, yep, I could see that happening.
Yeah, and so at the end of the MUFON meeting, Denise Stoner is really good. I tell you what, she's really good. And it turns out that her and Nancy are becoming really good friends. So Nancy was actually staying with her. She lives in Portland, Maine, or north of Portland, Maine, up on. Well, you were there. I still didn't get to go to her retreat, but anyway, Denise had everybody. The chairs are all organized in rows and aisles and everything. She's like, let's make a big circle and have a little open discussion about what we saw during, drawing the UFO, and just shoot some things back and forth at each other, which I thought was a nice touch. And so we're there, and we're on this circle, and, anybody could talk. And I talked some, and everybody else seemed to talk some, and, got to the point where everybody was relaxed and felt comfortable. And when you're relaxed and comfortable, the creative juices start to flow. So people were saying some really interesting things. And I'm looking around the room, and there was this lady, I can't remember her name, but she said, when you go to look at somebody's aura, you don't look at the person. You look above their head and try and focus on some nondescript point above or around their head. Because if you look right at their face, that's not where the colors are going to come through. It's going to come through over their crown chakra. And what she said is something that I've known for forever and for years, and that I teach people when people want me to teach them meditation techniques. And I'm looking around the room, and I can see I'm not really good at deciphering colors, but I can see like signatures above and around people, like bent light. Anyway, but Nancy Hewins had the most glowing presence about her. I mean, I could see it all the way across the room. She was on the opposite side of the room of me, and she had the most ambient, beautiful, effulgent God light that surrounded her. I was like, I don't think I've ever seen anybody with such a powerful God light in my life. And and after the meeting, I told her, you know, I mean, because I can see angels, which is pretty easy to do for me, and I'm sure it is for you too also, Lynn, and Karen for that matter. But the angels that surrounded her God light, glowed unlike anything I think I'd ever seen before.
Wow. I believe it. She's amazing. She's
just
one of the sweetest, most sincere people you could ever meet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it was great, you know, and then, you know, we're saying goodbye, and she's like, I'm a hugger. You got to give me a hug goodbye. And I felt this incredible energy exchange. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing more powerful than touching somebody, you know, whatever your intentions are, you know, but if it's in a healing capacity or just in a loving kind of capacity, love for another fellow human being, the energy that came off of her was so powerful. I mean, it was almost like I stuck a key into an electric socket while I was dripping wet coming out of the shower. I mean, it was...
Yeah, I believe it. She's awesome.
Oh, it was so powerful. It was so cool too. You know, I love meeting other experiencers. And I know you all will agree with me totally, but it helps us to grow ourselves also.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I had a question. Speaking of multiple generation experiences, there was a talking point here about your daughters or your children having some experiences and telling you about it, because the kind of experiencer that you are, you really couldn't keep that under a hat. You know, you'd have to have your family kind of know something about it. And how have you interacted with your children about your own experiences?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, all of my experiences have been really positive. Nothing that I've been afraid of. So I'm very open with my kids. I will talk to them about it. You know, ask any questions answer any questions that they have. You know, just very open about it and make it a regular, you know, part of our conversations. And my youngest daughter, she has had experiences that she's talked about. I think my son has too, but he's not quite ready to talk about that, and that's absolutely fine. But my youngest daughter has had experiences, and the main one that she remembers is she had a dream, and she remembers it as a dream, which, as you all know, is very common, but had a lot of details to it that she remembered. She said she was in this place that she didn't recognize. The ground was kind of red, but, you know, and the sky was blue, and she saw like 2 or 3 aliens, is what she said. I saw 2 or 3 aliens, and so I walked up to them and asked them where I was. I said, hey, where am I? And they said, well, you're on Mars. We brought you here. And so she's like, okay. You know, she also has no fear about it. And then she said they showed her, and she was 7 at the time when she told me this, they showed her a round house, I think was how she described it. And I had her draw it out for me, and it was actually a dome is what she meant by that, which, you know, she had never seen anything about a dome on, you know, domes on Mars or the moon or anything like that, so she wouldn't have gotten any of that information from anywhere. So I thought that was really interesting. And then she remembers being on their ship, and she kind of described it that it was like a teardrop shape. And she said she was in this one area that was like an apartment, and she said they had you know, stuff that like I could sit down and relax, and there was food there, and so I was like, oh, really? Well, what kind of food did they have? I don't know what made me ask that question. Perhaps I was just hungry that day or something. But I said, oh, really? What kind of food did they have? She goes, oh, they had canned meat. And I was like, canned meat? You know, she would never have seen canned meat. I don't know where she would even get that from.
Canned meat.
I'm always, you know, I'm one of those really like, okay, my kids are going to have organic meat, you know, no antibiotics, organic milk, you know, so we wouldn't be having like, you know, Spam in our house or anything. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not what we choose to eat. And so I was laughing when she said that. I was like, well, where did they get that? She goes, I don't know. They think that's what we eat. was funny. And she drew a picture of her on the spaceship for me, and then she saw my picture. It's interesting that of the mantid that I had seen, and she saw him and she was like, oh, I saw him too. And I said, what? She goes, yeah, there were like the grays, but they didn't look like regular grays. They were kind of tan in color, but they talked a lot. But this guy, I think she calls him the green dude. Like the green dude, he didn't really talk. He just looked at me. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. She goes, but the other ones talk for him. They talk a lot. And so I was like, okay. That's pretty funny. But, the really interesting thing, and Mary Rodwell is actually going to be talking about this in her upcoming book that she's writing right now. But my daughter had seen, she was homesick probably a couple of days after she told me about the dream, and she said that in her room, she was laying on her bed in her room during the day, and she saw this symbol kind of go across her wall and then go up towards the ceiling and disappear. And I said, oh, okay. She goes, I don't know what it meant or anything, but I saw it. So I said, okay, well, can you draw it for me? And she said, yeah, she drew it out, and it kind of reminded me of the goalpost in football, kind of that, like, squared off U with a stick coming down the middle. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I hadn't seen anything like that, and, with the people that I've talked to and the things that I've seen. So I actually I emailed Mary, and I said, hey, Mary, have you, because I work with Mary on the peer support program, too, and she's amazing. And I said, I told her what my daughter had told me, and I said, she drew the symbol out, and I had taken a picture of it and emailed it to her. I said, have you ever seen anything like this? Have you ever come across it? Because I knew, she does a lot of work with kids, especially who have ET experiences and ET languages and all of that. And so she wrote back, no, I don't know anything of it, but let me ask around and I'll let me get back to you on it. And I said, okay. And within, and I forgot, she had asked me, if my daughter knew what it meant. And I had previously asked her that as well, and she said she didn't. And so Mary said, well, ask her how it makes her feel. A lot of the times the younger kids will understand it better that way if you ask them that. And I did, and I said, okay, well, what does it make you feel when you look at it? And she said, well, it just makes me feel like they're watching me. I mean, not in a scary way, but just watching me, like keeping an eye on me, and letting me know that they're there or around. And I said, okay, that's good. She goes, it's not scary. It's not a bad thing. And I said, okay, I get it. And then within, I'd say probably about 45 minutes, Mary emailed me back and said that she had asked a little girl here in the, a little girl's parents here in the U.S. that she has talked with, who has also said she's been to Mars, and she was 7 years old as well. And she emailed the girl's mom and, said, could you see if she knows what this means or she recognizes this at all? So the mom kind of printed out the picture and showed it to her, didn't tell her any background information at all, and said, hey, have you ever seen this symbol? And the little girl's like, oh, yeah, I saw that. They wrote that on the board when they were teaching us on Mars. And so that was interesting that they had that kind of coincidence. And then she said, well, okay, well, do you know what it means? And she said, yeah, it just means, like, that they're watching you, that they're going to be back for you, not in a bad way. And the way she described it, which I thought was really amazing, was she said it's kind of like, when the astronauts go on the moon and they put the flag down on the moon and it says, like, America was here. But that's not necessarily what the flag means, but that's what it means in that specific example. So it's kind of like that. It means, like, that they're watching you and that they'll come back for you. And so it was exactly what my daughter had said, too, which was really, really fascinating. And my daughter had seen it a couple of times after that as well, the symbol in different places. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So, yes, long story short, not so much. Yes, my youngest daughter does have experience.
And I've seen some of the pictures that she's drawn, and they're fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh, totally fascinating. Like the one with the rocket ship, and you can see, what is it, either Earth in the background, or it was Earth in the background, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, a little, a young kid comes up with something like that. Was that placed in her mind? You know what I'm saying? Wasn't that placed there, or maybe she actually saw it? I don't know. Yeah. What do you think?
I think she must have. I don't know. I mean, I kind of think that she had the experience. But the thing that I found really fascinating about that specific picture, is that if you look at the drawing of Earth that she made, it looks like you're looking at the Pacific Ocean side of Earth. Like you can kind of see the western edge of the U.S. and, you know, like China, and looking at it from that perspective, it looks very much like the Earth would look from that perspective. So I found that fascinating, you know, like how many 7-year-olds would be able to do that? And just, you know, and it's not like she was looking at a reference, because I was right next to her when she was drawing it. She was just drawing it all from memory. So it was pretty amazing.
So think about your regression, Lynn, and what happened to you at 7. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's within the realm of possibility that something similar is happening to your daughter also.
Oh, interesting. I didn't even make the connection that they were both at 7 years old. Huh.
Oh, I guess I just put that together, but I started to think about it, and I'm like, and I mean, that story was just so remarkable and incredible, and you didn't remember it. Only through regression could you have unearthed those latent memories. You know, and thank God for Dr. Lessin, who's an absolute genius at it. So it begs the question, you know, maybe one day when your daughter's, you know, considerably older, maybe she would want to have regression done. You know, I mean, I guess that would be her choice when she's older or whatever. But imagine the stories she'll come up with. They may even be somewhat similar to the one you told today.
Yeah, I don't know. It would be fascinating. You know, it's funny. Ever since I had the regression, like, and I've heard other people say this. I mean, I do regressions on people myself, you know, but this was actually the first time I'd ever had one done on me. I had been hypnotized before, but hadn't done a regression on myself, or had a regression done. And so I know this intellectually, but going through the experience, I think it's always a little bit different. But different things that I've heard since then have triggered different memories for me. Like I was watching a show that Corey Good was talking about my lab abductions, you know, when he was a kid, and being brought to, you know, this like special school where they would teach them different things, and how they had like a white van that would pick him up at his regular school and bring him there. And it was funny because when he said the white van, it triggered this memory that I had completely forgotten about. But I remember when I was probably in my late teens, early 20s, I had asked my mom, because I had this memory of going to school on a base, on a military base. And I said to her, I was, you know, but I couldn't quite place it. So it was one of those weird things, like, you know, we moved around a lot because my dad was in the military, so I went to many different schools. But I still couldn't, like, I had this knowing that I had gone to school on a military base, but I couldn't remember the name of it or what grade I was. I know I was really young at the, you know, maybe 6, 7 age, 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there. And so I asked my mom, oh, what was that school that I went to on the military base? And she kind of looked at me funny, like, you never went to school on a military base? And I was like, yes, I know I did. You know, we took the white van there, and there was a school. What was that school? Was it preschool? I know I was young. And she's like, Lynn, you never went to school on a military base. And so I kind of dropped it, like, okay, maybe I'm, like, losing my mind. And I didn't think about it at all until, you know, I saw that video where Corey said something about a white van taking him to the school. And I was just, oh, my gosh, that's crazy. So, hey, you never know. I mean, I guess she could be having something like that happen. It's always
Whitley Strieber wrote a book called The Secret School, and he talked about how children were going to these schools. This is goodness. In 1993, I think he wrote it. No, 95 or 6 or something like that. Yeah, maybe 97.
It's called The Secret School?
Yeah. It's called The Secret School, I believe. Yeah, it's been so long since I've read it. I think I have it somewhere, but I don't know where it is right now. But talking about, and when I read it, I was getting all these memories coming back and getting chills. And went, wow. So.
Wow. Yeah.
Probably real.
Yeah, they were recruiting out of the schools. They were looking for psychic children to be in these programs, because I found that out because I was in recruitment at about 7 or 8 years old, and they put me in the gifted program, and thinking back of different things that happened, we did, guided imagery, relaxation techniques, and then we were out. It wasn't the typical, lay down for a nap on your mat kind of thing. And, almost anything could have happened during that time. And then I received a full, which is not against my parents' knowledge, a full psychological profile in the vice principal's office. So they in the Cold War era, they were looking for all these people that had, parapsychological talents and abilities for these super soldier programs and super psychic programs. And so the schools were like a clearinghouse, for kids, and they were observing them. And I just recently had a distinct memory of being brought to a building, and there was like a preschool sort of thing, and I was brought in there, and they put me in one of those rooms where you have the one-way glass so that someone can watch you. And being the weird little psychic kid that I was, I actually could project my point of view into another person. I didn't realize I did that, but I used to do that because I had really bad eyes and I couldn't see, so I was like looking at things through other people's minds. And I put my mind inside one of the people behind the curtain and was watching myself play with toys in the other room. I remember doing that. And it was weird. It's like I have a whole bunch of chapters now that I've got to say, oh, what was that about? So maybe it's time for me to look at some regression things too. But I think regression is like the big question we're always asking ourselves as experiences is who am I? Because when you meet other intelligences and you have interaction, now you have to change your narrative of who you are as a human being. Like, who am I that this is happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Why can I do these things? And I think that's one of the reasons why we're steered away from talking to or interacting or telepathically interacting with other races, is that we get a comparison of how the human situation is compared to other intelligences and other civilizations. And it's very enlightening, and it shows us some of the flaws and the false narratives that we have of who humans are on the earth. And I wonder if you guys have had that philosophical, thought of who am I, who are we as human beings, because we've interacted as experiencers with people from other civilizations.
Yeah, I definitely have certainly, it's almost like I discovered a whole other lifetime having done this regression. So it absolutely makes you kind of stop and think about, like, who am I as a person? Am I the person that I always thought I was? And I think ultimately, yes, I was. I have had experiences that I haven't uncovered completely. But yeah, it's definitely a strange perspective. It's hard to put into words, but it is, a strange perspective when you kind of put it all together, looking at my interactions with different beings, the experiences that I consciously have, now and remember, and then the regression as well. It's like it's difficult to put it all together in a cohesive way, and I'm getting to that point slowly, I think, where I'm starting to integrate it more and understand it a little bit better. I certainly have, so many more questions now that I've done the regression. I already told Janet, I need to have another one done because I have so many questions. But it is a weird perspective, isn't it? It's strange. It's hard to put into words.
It is. And
for a while there, I was getting them once a week. I was getting them ongoing because every time I did it, I got deeper and deeper into the process. When I first met Dr. Lessin, I was doing it, and it was an amazing process. Yeah. So I understand that to do another one. And each time you do one, you'll get more and more of your story. However, once you start this process, you can ask yourself before you go to bed to please download, as you're capable of receiving it, more and more information. And one of the things you tell your subconscious is, and I'm going to be paying attention to you. I'm going to write what I get when I wake up. So you keep a journal by your bedside, and you just write your first impressions. You may not remember a download or a dream, but you just start writing your impressions, and soon all the stuff starts flowing back, and you find yourself writing like a whole page or two, and then you stop and you reread it and you go, oh my goodness, look at what I just said. So it's you've just begun your journey. There's a lot more there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating. It really is. I can't wait to do another one.
Good.
You know what's interesting is that I've been aggressively trying to get somebody to do a regression on me for probably 5 years, and I've had multiple people tell me they would do it, and then not return my phone calls. And
really?
Just act like we never even initiated the conversation in the first place, including Denise Stoner. So then you got to start to think, why are these people lying to me, or are they being blocked? And if they're being blocked, who or what's blocking them? And I figured it out that it's me that's blocking them. I'm blocking them. My soul is blocking them because it wasn't time for me to receive mine yet. So I met this lady who actually listened to the Jimmy Church show and listened to me talk about the blue people for 2.5 hours, which was an awesome show. And then she called me. She found my number on my website and called me, and turns out she lives about 45 minutes away, and that she's a licensed hypnotic regression therapist that works with experiencers. I'm like, perfect. So she comes to my house, and we pray and meditate, and she said, you know what, they're not going to let me do it. I'm like, well, who's not going to let me do it? She said, I can't exactly tell you who they are, but I'm being told absolutely do not do a regression on him now. And I'm like, I'm very frustrated over this, but I get it. You know, if your guides are telling you something that strongly, then you should listen to them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like you said, it just must not be the right time yet.
You know what? I think that I have so much latent memory information that would just change my life and change the world that it's just not meant to come out yet. Mm-hmm. So one day it will be, and I embrace the day that it does.
Absolutely.
Karen, are you still with us? What's going on with you?
Yeah. I haven't had a regression. I haven't had a regression myself. I'd be interested in doing it. If somebody can't make that happen in their circles of friends or life or whatever, I mean, I know that you just went to a hypnosis classes, Jed, and what would you say to somebody, like you were talking about journaling, or could you go a little bit more into if somebody wants to, explore that on their own, how they could do that? I know that I've done automatic writing. That's helped me a lot.
When you invite your higher self to communicate with you, all you want to do is get yourself into a relaxed state, and then you connect to your higher self just by communicating empathically. Invite your higher self to start communicating with you, and then you let it go. You give it to your subconscious, and it's a form of hypnosis. We're always hypnotized. Life is hypnosis. So people don't realize it. We're hypnotized, and we're living in the matrix, which is part of this false paradigm of existence. And most people don't get that, but when you think about it, this is an illusion. This entire reality is an illusion. And when we're driving, when we're listening to TV or music or TV or whatever, we're always in a hypnotic state. So you can just very easily ask for information, and if you ask and just are patient and pay attention to it coming through, you'll get all these answers from your psyche, your subconscious. I don't know if you remember a woman named Ruth Montgomery. She wrote a series of wonderful books back in I forget what it was, like the 60s or 70s. She was one of my earliest finds for information on all this. It was just absolutely fascinating what she got from this higher self. And in those days, she used a typewriter. It was pre-computer days. And it was a very famous reporter in Washington, so she was very well known and respected. And then she started getting all this information on what it was like when we die and what's like on the other side, and communication. You have to not be afraid and part of what stops us is our own self-criticism. Oh, I'm just making this up. Oh, this is a bunch of bull. Where's this coming from? But you always surround yourself with white light and protection. You only allow, good forces to come and speak to you and through you, and then you just begin to, reflect and accept. And of course, you don't buy everything you get, but you'll notice a pattern after a while, and the information will start coming easier and easier. So that's one thing that you can do, and everybody out there, all listeners, just start paying attention to what your higher self is trying to tell you.
Yep. I had another question. I wanted to find out how the peer support program was developing of free, because I haven't heard news about it in a while, and we were talking about, trying to help people find someone to help them with their experiences and regression and all that. That I'm finding that's like a huge need. There's probably not enough therapists out there for what is becoming a real growing need of people wanting to interpret their experiences, and I was just wondering how the program was going.
The program is going really well. We get a lot of people that have been writing in, asking for someone to talk to. I have an awesome woman that helps me out with the program, as well with, doing intakes and stuff. And, it's just growing, and it's slowly growing. I think over, the holiday time period, funny enough, we didn't necessarily have as many people write in. I think people are just more focused on the holidays and, trying to, get through the season and all that stuff. They're not necessarily focused on all these other things. Certainly did have people write in, but not as many. So it's starting to kick back up again. And, it's just growing and growing. It's going great. It really is. I mean, I think it's such a needed service that so many people that, we talk to have said, oh, you're the first person I've ever been able to talk to about this. And, it's like when you hear that, you realize, yeah, absolutely, this is something we need, and we need more of it. And so we're in the process of trying to connect with different support groups around the country to kind of make a more connected network, not necessarily under the free name, but just so that we have that resource to say, these are a group in your area. And free is also making up a list of support providers, and that has varied psychologists, regression therapists, energy workers too. We have some of those on there, so just a whole a varied list of people, and we're trying to get more people. So if anybody would like to be on that list, definitely please email us. You can email me directly if you want, because right now I'm the one that's stating the list. And so my email is Lynn Hartrum, that's LYNNHARTRUM as in Mary, 476@gmail.com. And we'll add you to the list, because we always have people asking, do you know of a regressionist in my area? Do you have a counselor you can refer me to? Because it's so hard to go in knowing, okay, am I going to be able to talk to this counselor and tell her that I'm having ET experiences, and is she going to think that I'm nuts if I do say this to them? So they really are very hesitant to try to find someone on their own, because it's hard to find someone who's open to it, and or at least who openly says that they're open to it. So, it's going great, but we definitely need more people, more support providers, so we have their contact info and we can send people their way.
Yeah, this is one of those things people don't even tell very close family members about. Mm-hmm. We have still such a stigma about experiencers, and so the society continues. I recently went to the International UFO Congress, and a Fox News affiliate came and just wanted to interview abductees. And then, of course, when I saw the report online, I was pretty disgusted with it, because it was, again, all that mocking and jokes about tinfoil hats and anal probes and all that sort of thing that they do. And so people are very reluctant to talk about it, and sometimes family members just give you the signal they don't want to hear about it either. It makes them uncomfortable. Or they just say, I've got several family members straight up said I'm crazy, and it's okay. I'm good with it because I'd rather be my true self and be thought of as crazy than to continue to in 2012 was my year. Like, if you're going to come out of the closet about being an experiencer, 2012 was a nice weird year to do that, and that's what I did. And I've taken my hits now, and I kind of know who still loves me for me and who's like, maybe, I don't know, they have expectations of me, right? They've seen you in a certain way, and now you're not that way anymore, and they don't know what to do. So it's like, but yeah, it's still very difficult. So it is important to find somebody accepting, and even when you're meeting new people and friends, it's like, well, what do you do? Well, I research UFO stuff, and get into it. I jump into it now more than I used to, and and I make people respect it in the sense that that this is a part of society, that this is happening to a lot of people, and that the military has been involved in it. It's not a fluffy topic. And are those things? If those things flying up in the sky are theirs, then we need to know who that is. And if a lot of people say it's ours, like the military developed these craft, and I go, oh great. Well, since there's no gas tailpipe sticking out of that craft, that means they're running on free energy. We need to give us free energy now. So if it's ours, they need to reveal that. So I get them either way. I get them going either way. Why this is important. What's your thoughts on that?
It's true, and it is really difficult for some people to talk to, anyone in their life. I have people that say, I can't even talk to my spouse about this, and they don't believe it. They don't want to hear it. They want no part of it. And it's unfortunate, that they can't even talk to their own family members, their immediate family members about it. There's such there is such a stigma still. It's unfortunate, though. I do have to say, on a better note, I do find more people. I am getting much more open about talking about it with people, and even strangers will sometimes, strike up a conversation, and it somehow comes up, and a lot of people are very open to it. They're curious. They're not necessarily making fun of it as much. They're just very curious and have a lot of questions, and the more you kind of talk to them about it, give them little tidbits here and there, the more questions they have, and you can kind of see like a light bulb go on, like, interesting. So, I am very encouraged by that as well. I think you're right with, 2012, there's definitely been kind of a switch, like a turning about it. I think more people are believing that ETs exist, and, we, like you had said, we kind of have a soft disclosure going on where we're getting little tidbits, from NASA or the government saying little kind of leading up to things. And so I think it's got more people thinking about it. But, yeah, unfortunately, there are still a lot of difficulties for a lot of experiencers that have just really no one to talk to. So it's really unfortunate.
Well, I hope it's turning too. I have seen that it's getting easier to strike up a conversation, and people really ask good questions now and are really curious, and they don't step back and look at you funny if you do. But it seems to be better. It seems to be that whatever process is going on, and I always think that the experiencer's path is the most important one because that's a personal experience. Instead of somebody telling you something who's an authority figure, you're having your own human experience. And I say that, they try to make as the paranormal, like, my joke is all my normal is para, but basically they kind of make it this outside thing that's separate from a human experience, and they say, well, we can't handle the truth, and I'm saying, well, gosh, humans have to handle tough truths all the time, and they have to handle a sick family member or war or financial difficulties. Is like, why would this be any more difficult? It's just one of a broader range of human experiences that people have had, way back into our ancestors' time. As you learn about the topic, you find out, that the indigenous people talk about the star visitors, and medieval paintings have pictures of UFOs in them. I mean, obviously this has been going on for a long time, and so it's the more you learn, the better you feel about what you're finding out. But if I was from another planet and I wanted to let a paranoid planet with a hierarchical government system kind of get used to my presence, I definitely would pick the experiencer's path and just try to expose as many people as possible so they start talking with each other. Because once that discussion happens, then we start comparing our commonalities of experience. That's the experiencer's path, and I think it's a main protocol that they, whoever they are, that's a variety of they, are using to get us used to the idea and to get past some of our basically xenophobia. We're kind of even racially and religion and other ways kind of divided from each other. We're xenophobic with each other. So you throw the ET thing in the mix, that's kind of scary for humans. So I think this is the path, and with all due regards to MUFON, I'm with you, John, on the MUFON thing. Experiencers many times have a bit of a mixed feelings about MUFON because MUFON's totally, focused on investigating cases with craft in it, and the humans that they talk to, they're always got this askance eye of, is that person credible or not? So you become under the microscope and part of the case instead of a witness. And if you put UFOs on trial, the eyewitness testimony alone would push it over the top, because we have so much witness of people, and they say, well, where's your proof? Well, goodness, we've sent people to jail on eyewitness reports. We haven't really put this to the same test as we do other things that we're trying to find out. And so I think it's fascinating to me, so many professional people, so many people that, military people, and so much, they're feeling this need to tell, they're running out of time. They need to tell before they get too old, or the wrong impression is given of our visitors. So I think, it's an experiencer's path, and this is a process we're helping with Free and other organizations for sure. And thanks for your assistance with that. Thanks for your work.
Oh, thanks. It's a wonderful program, and I'm really honored that I've been able to be a part of it and work with all of the amazing people that I have worked with, and talking with all the different experiencers. I mean, it certainly has broadened my understanding of it greatly. And, I definitely do agree with you that I think that, like you were saying, as far as ETs coming here, that perhaps there's a certain protocol that they have with working with experiencers. That would make perfect sense to me, because I've talked with people who have a broad range of experiences with a bunch of different types of ETs, and it seems very similar regardless of the type of ET that they're dealing with. There seems to be a common sort of way that they have these experiences, often starting with remembering them as dreams and then getting little snippets here and little snippets there, and then perhaps going to a point where they start having a conscious experience when they're, emotionally ready for it. Not always, but the majority of the time. And it's funny because people, once they get used to the idea of, having these experiencers, so many people have said, I have a much easier time with the ETs. I'm less afraid of them than I am other humans. And I laugh because I understand that completely. It's funny that we have such a reaction to the idea of speaking to an extraterrestrial, and yet look around us, there's so many scary people on Earth, so why would these people be so much more scary, or these beings be so much more scary than some of the craziness that we have going on here? So it's interesting. It's all truly fascinating. I love it.
Thank you.
I love it too. I like what you just said. These people here are pretty scary, and we live our lives, and we never know if we're going to have, some kind of crazy shooter come and gun us at the mall. So what are we going to be afraid of? But we can't walk around in fear. I love my experiences as an experiencer. I love my extraterrestrial contact. I think it's really enhanced my life. What about the rest of you? What do you think about your contact? Has it been negative or positive?
Mine's been largely positive. Outside of being on an operating table a couple times, but that was more when I was younger. I can't think of any negative experiences I've had over the last couple decades. It's all been pretty much just positive, and I think it all goes back to my meditation techniques also, by surrounding myself with light. Like you said earlier, Janet, you know, be the light, be of the light, and only allow energy into your circles that of the light. And that's what I meditate on. I meditate on it every single day and every single night. I meditate on being surrounded by loving, benevolent ETs that are here to guide me, to love me, and to protect me. And I believe it's working. I believe it's working, absolutely.
Yep,
excellent. Karen.
Oh, yeah.
Karen, have you had any negative experiences, or all positive, or a mixture?
Pretty much totally positive. I think I've had some characters, you know, some kind of interesting beings that were kind of characters. They were kind of had interesting diversity of experiences that they were willing to share, but I believe their intent was very much for the positive. And then I just, you know, feel like I've been working on a lifetime of deprogramming of you know, belief systems that were, you know, it makes me look at my belief systems. And I think the one that was most striking was how I've struggled with, you know, my self-esteem issues. And one of the beings, you know, I was just realizing how much that being regarded my personal sovereignty and free will and respect, you know, that being was reflecting back respect that I didn't even have for myself, and because I thought of myself in such a small way, and that experience of that feeling made me, you know, really look at, oh man, I'm really undercutting myself. I need to realize I'm an eternal being and having a human experience, and think much more positively about myself. So I've been very challenged sometimes about my own viewpoint of myself and people around me and the earth. You know, being worth saving. A lot of people will just give up on the earth and say, let it burn and all that. I mean, people really, you know, denigrate our planet because our humanity is, and, you know, we have some negativity that we see in the news. The news seems to feed us a lot of negativity and make us feel negative about other people. But it's that perspective, that pulling, you know, outside the planet, as Dr. Edgar Mitchell said, you know, he looked at planet Earth from space, and that perspective realized, you know, a great truth about how we're all on this one planet together, and that it's worth saving and it's worth fighting for, and we're going to take some flack from people for our viewpoints of you know, how we need to stop being selfish and let the corporations tell us what to do and pollute the earth. It's like it's worth fighting for. So I feel uplifted and given a higher view of a lot of things because of my experiences philosophically.
Well, we're almost out of time. We have like 7 minutes. Let's do a wrap-up round. I guess we didn't ask you, Lynn, what was your overall experiences? Were they positive, negative, mixture?
Yeah, mine have mostly been, you know, really, really positive. And I, you know, agree 100% with what Karen just said. She, you know, as she was saying it, I'm in my head here. Like, yep, absolutely. It's, you know, having these experiences has also taught me so much about not only myself, but like we as humans together, and helped me see the earth and humanity in a completely different way, and realize, you know, like, yeah, we have a lot of really horrible, scary things going on here, and humanity has such a potential for evil at times, but we also have such an extreme potential for love and beauty and all these amazing things. And I think my experiences have really shown me that and helped me see that in a different way. Not that I didn't see it before, but just really have put it out there for me in a way that I necessarily didn't see it before. And so to me, that's, I mean, how could I ever think that that was negative? You know, it's just such an overall good experience in general, that regardless of what happened at any one point in time, that's what it's led up to. So for me, it has to be overall positive.
Okay. Any final words?
I had one question. I had one question for Lynn that I wanted to ask. Tell us about your concurrent lifetime as an Arcturian.
Oh, okay. Really quickly, yes, that is something that I have learned to do. I'm a big proponent of meditation. I think, like Janet was saying too, if you want to find out more information, as far as dream journaling, it's fantastic, but meditation is also key. And it's through meditation that I've been able to kind of sync up with that lifetime at times and go to a place where I'm able to experience my lifetime as an Arcturian, as an energetic being. My experience with the Arcturians is a little bit different than a lot of people. I have had experience with a type of Arcturian that is a more energetic being and very spiritual, very meditative group. And so oftentimes when I really kind of need a break and need an escape, I will go into meditation and go there and enjoy my time with them, as well as being able to come back here in a different headspace and enjoy my time here. So hopefully that's a quick answer.
Okay, final words from Karen.
Yeah, I helped to get the free organization's Facebook going, and you can find that on Facebook. Look up if you go to Facebook, look up capital FREE Experiencers, and you guys can find that and join the conversation there. It's pretty good, and comparing experiences is really a great way to deepen your own understanding of things. So I'd encourage people to check that out. And then, what's the website again, Lynn and John? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Experiencer.org.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, experiencer.org.
Yeah, those are some resources to go to. Yeah, and to write to Lynn or also contact Aquarian Radio or any of us. We're very willing and able to help, people start to take that journey of understanding and have somebody to talk to. It means a lot.
Okay. Well, we're almost out of time, and I want to thank everybody. Does anybody have one final thing to say before I put on the exit music and call it a day?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me on again. I really enjoy every opportunity that I get to talk with you guys. It's always wonderful.
Well, thank you, Lynn. It's been wonderful. Yes. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to thank Lynn for being on the show again. I got to meet her in person, and she's a absolute ascended light worker that was sent here to help people. She doesn't get paid to do this, with a peer support program, so she does it because it's important to her and that she actually has a genuine love for people. And I think that should not be unrecognized, that, she's a volunteer, and really we all are. We're not getting paid for this. We do it because it's important to us, and we want to try and help people. So that's my motivating force.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. It's been another episode of Aquarian Radio on aquarianradio.com. And our special guest was Lynn Hartrum with co-host Carol Lessin, Reverend John Polk, and Karen Christine Patrick. Much love and blessings, and aloha.
Bye-bye.
North Pole Hotline.
Help! My in-laws are hosting Thanksgiving, and we're bringing the dressing.
You mean stuffing?
No, dressing. I need cute outfits for everyone.
Get to Old Navy.
Old Navy?
Yep, Old Navy's kicking off the holidays with stylish denim, velvet tops, the season's best dresses, and 40% off your entire purchase now through Tuesday.
40% off? We'll be stuffing our shopping bags full.
And don't forget colorful sweaters and amazing outerwear, too. You can even buy online and pick up in store for free.
Ooh, I love an all-you-can-wear buffet.
Holiday your heart out at Old Navy and OldNavy.com. Valid 11/18 to 11/20. Exclusions apply. See stores for details.